Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Brooke and this is a channel where I talk about houseplants and do different DIYs. So if you have not, take a minute and subscribe to my channel. That way you can be up to date on all my brand new videos in 2024. If you are a recurring viewer, thank you so much for coming back and watching all of my videos in 2023. It has meant a lot and I really appreciate it. So I hope you stick around for 2024. Today, I wanted to do the best and worst of 2023, kind of go through the year because I feel like I've changed a lot of plants and I did a whole house plant purge in the middle of the year. And so things look different in my collection. My collection's actually smaller than it started out at in the beginning of the year. And so I just thought it would be fun to go through and show you or tell you best and worst of a few different lists that I have going on right now. But before that, I thought we would do a little review, I guess, or like end of the year review. At least I was doing that. So since about 2020, I've kept a running list of all the plants that I've owned. That has started again because I officially started like collecting, I would say, at that point. Before I had plants. Like I had a money tree and succulents and like a fiddly fig, a palm tree, and some other random things. Not even a palm tree at that time, I don't think, but had some other random plants. And so I was never keeping a running list. But in 2020, I officially started collecting plants and I started getting plants that were more uncommon and some that were common. But I officially started collecting plants, I will say, then. And then I just started keeping track of all the varieties that I've owned and basically marking them out if I killed them and kind of putting an X by them if it was like a plant I would never get again. And so I was looking back through them, trying to get an idea of what plants I lost in 2023, which was also a loss because it was very difficult. And I think that my houseplant purge video kind of covered it. But I was just looking through the years and in 2023, and before, I have owned a total of 115 different varieties of plants among the genuses of like Calathea, so like Marantacea family, Philodendron, Pothos, Syngonium, Cacti. Trying to think of what else was in there. Oh, Alocasia. I at one point had a lot of Alocasia and really loved Alocasia and Calathea and collected like practically every single, I don't even know what version of it. But yeah, I thought it was interesting to see that I in total have had experience in 115 different plants. But I started the year with about 65 plants. And at the end of the year, I ended up with 55 plants. So I do have a whole greenhouse and I did sell plants just this first time, like this month. And so I'm not counting all of those plants that I have in there, but just personally that I own, I ended the year with 55 plants. I still feel like that's a lot of plants, but it's not as many as I've had in the past all at once. I think the max that I've owned is like 109 plants, and that was in probably 2021. And so then we moved and I got rid of a lot of the plants, and I actually moved in 2021 with only 32 plants, and then again grew it back up to about 65. It might have been 70 at one point, but I cannot remember. And then this year, ending it with 55 plants. And so I feel like this year I've kind of siloed in the plants that I like and what I like growing, what I enjoy growing, what I want to grow, versus before I kind of just sporadically got plants as they came or as I saw them. And so it gave me a chance, an opportunity to really hone in on what I want to grow and what I enjoy growing. And so the 55 plants that I own are the plants that I enjoy growing and like, and I will not lie, most of them are all philodendron. I have 3 anthurium, I have mostly philodendron, pothos, and like maybe 5 different varieties of monstera, and 2 syngonium, but otherwise it's practically philodendron for the win. So anyways, that was an interesting little recap that I did of myself for this year and seeing how many plants that I had. Because again, through the year, I'll go through, if one has died off, I'll like exit out. If I have added one, I will add it to the list, and just to see what I've had in the like prior and now what I have, to keep track and making sure I'm not buying duplicates of things. Because when you have 109 plants, it does get overwhelming and you're like, wait, do I really have that plant? And so at that point, I was not wanting any duplicates. So it's a handy dandy list. So you can start one. Maybe this 2024 year, I think I'm going to start a new list just to see like what lasts throughout the year and what doesn't make it. Make it easier on what plants I probably shouldn't own in that next year. There were a few plants that I added to my list this year that I had really wanted to own, and I have a list. It's not really a list, wish list thing, because there have been plenty of opportunities to buy like the plants in the past. But so I'm not like jumping at these, but if it finds itself in my house, I guess, for a good and reasonable price, then I will. And so I did mark off 3 of those plants. One of them I'm not going to share, but I'll share it in another video because it was just a recent purchase. And so I'll do an unboxing of that because I'm really excited about it. But I did mark off 2 plants off of that list. And one was this Philodendron tortum. And so this came from Suburban Planters or Suburban Plants in Mesquite. And so this guy, I have the price tag on it. It was $40. And so I was really excited to see this because they have been really costly in the past. So over the course of 3 years, probably, I've seen this plant. The highest being $90, anywhere from $70. I had seen one in Florida that was really, really small for $60. And it was just like, I like the plant. I want the plant, but I'm not going to pay for that. And so Suburban Plants had them in stock. And so I picked one up and it has a new leaf here. This is the newest leaf. So you can see it's a lot larger than all of the rest. And it's just a funky plant. It is not like anything I have ever seen. So if you are in the market for a unique plant, like this guy is a good one because look at that foliage. It is so bizarre also to see these leaves unfurl. I can't remember who has like a time lapse of one of these unfurling, but a big plant person has one. And it's just very fascinating to see. They all are crumpled up and it looks like the leaf is going to be deformed and not come out, but it does. It comes out like that, like perfectly. And so it's just a fun grower. This sits under my Barina, T5 Barina grow light right here. And I will tell you that it did have another leaf coming out when I got it and it died off because I let it dry all the way out. So normally with my philodendron, I let all of them dry out all the way out unless one of them tells me. And so this one told me it didn't like that, especially when it was pushing out a new growth. And so I just have to watch it. If it's growing and pushing out a new leaf, I make sure that I don't let it dry out and I'm watering it probably before the last inch of soil is dry. I have not even repotted this guy yet. It does have roots growing at the bottom, so that's a next watering, I'll probably repot that and size it up. But I really like this plant. It's very interesting. Again, a very unique foliage. It's super cool and fun to look at. And then the other one that I marked off my list that I will share is the El Choco Red. So this is a Philodendron El Choco Red. And again, got this at Suburban Plants in Mesquite. They had them and she gave them to me for a really good price. And so I ended up purchasing 2 of them. I actually split one of them. I added it to my plants to sell at a pop-up, and so I did sell one of them. But I kept this guy. This was the biggest one. It does grow under a Barina grow light, just like my other plants do. But I had this one in my greenhouse, and it did really well. I just watered this because look at it; it's really droopy. But normally I let this guy drop all the way out, and it doesn't bother it. But this guy is doing really well. I honestly would like to split this one too because this is a tissue culture plant. Talked about this lots. There are actually 4 different plants in this one pot, and only one of them is growing like the quickest and largest, which is this one right here that's pushing out all of these nice sized leaves. And I would like to get this on a grow pole, and so it can grow and become larger, and then let the other little guys like these right here grow on their own. Like these have really small little leaves that are coming out. They're sizing up, but just not as quickly as this big guy right here. And so it has been an incredibly easy to grow plant. It hasn't given me any pest issues. This is a velvet plant. I was a little bit nervous because we'll talk about it later, but there is a velvet plant that's giving me issues. And it's philodendron. But this guy has done really well. Like the backing of them is very beautiful. This red color and the red veining. But I really love it. Their stems have a little bit of hairiness to them as well, which I didn't know that until this past leaf, the newest leaf. It started getting that texture. And so just like a fuzzy petiole or a squamiferium, I don't ever know how to pronounce that, but it has that, added detail to it. So I was really excited to add that one to my collection. I really love this plant and it's super beautiful, and I'm excited to see how much more it will grow in my care. So I've actually recently moved it out of the greenhouse because there were too many plants in there from my sale, and I moved it right here. So above me, like this light source here, is actually a Sansi 35 watt. So I do not have the overhead light on in this room. This is all lighting from my grow lights. And so I have Sansies, 3 of them here, Barina's here, Sansi here. But this one is getting light from this Sansi 35 watt. I'm going to see how well it does because I haven't given it a lower light situation to try it and see if it survives. But so far it's doing okay. We'll keep you posted on that. That was really my review in plants to own that I did get in 2023. Now I did get a lot of other plants in 2023, not a lot I would say, but I have gotten some plants in 2023, and they were not on a list. They were just plants that I picked up. So my Jose Bono, which if you've been here, that one was struggling. I actually have it here. I ended up cutting it all the way back because it reverted completely. And then in this leaf here, it started to push out a little bit of variegation right here, but this newest leaf has nothing. So we're just watching that one. I ended up then picking up a new Jose Bono that is very variegated now. So this one I picked up again from Suburban Plants. If you haven't noticed a trend, most of my plants are from Suburban Plants, but it's going to be a really beautiful half moon. And then the other leaves are just a really pretty variegation. They are highly variegated. This one down here is very lime green. And then I did pick up a few other plants that were on my Florida trip, and one of them I'll talk about later. But the other one was a Parisa Verde. I kind of gave up on that one too because I didn't realize that it was a temperature-based variegation, and so I ended up picking another one up. So I have 2 of those as well, just to see if that one would push out better variegation because it started with really great variegation. But I'm sad to inform you that it is basically reverted back to a green state because I'm not giving it the high temperature that it needs. So there were a few plants that I had picked up. I can't even think of anything else, like a Manjula pothos. I had another one. Yeah, some of them are on the list. So we'll just get into the list. I wanted to do I guess superlatives, however you would like to say, but my best grower of this year, I was looking at my plants, trying to find what plant that was going to be because a lot of my plants are really good growers and grow pretty quickly, honestly, but I give them the light and I give them the fertilizer. However, one of them deserves some extra recognition because number 1, I never talk about it, and number 2, I kind of don't do anything with it, and it still just continues to grow and get larger. That one is my Philodendron McDowell. So I believe I got this guy. Wow, yeah, you can see that. I believe I got this guy this year. I really think I got him this year. I got it from Tipsy Gardener. I know that for a fact. I have repotted it since, so now it's about probably an 8-inch. It's a 6-inch pot, but it has just grown magnificently. I mean, it came with this oh gosh, this is going to be really hard. Let me take it out of the basket. This is a crawler, by the way, so it shouldn't be in this little pot like that. It technically needs to be in a different situation, but it had smaller leaves. I would say this is the biggest original leaf that it had right here, and so it did have smaller leaves on it. They had all died off, but this chunk here, it's a huge cutting right there. I've never seen a plant, I guess, like that before, being sold with just a massive chunk. And so it started out really well, obviously, this chunk, and it had smaller leaves, again, this one being the oldest and the biggest, but it has just slowly and steadily pushed out new leaves like crazy. So these are pretty big. I mean, you can see that one's actually smaller than this one is here, but it just consistently, wow, I literally can't speak today. It consistently grows and grows really well, and I don't give it the attention. I just kind of leave it in its spot. It sits in a southwest facing window, and I just ignore it. And so I do fertilize it with every watering, but I let the soil dry completely out. And honestly, I feel like I let this guy dry out way longer or stay dry way longer than any other plant that I have, partially because I kind of just forget about it. But you can see here, it's got a new growth point again. And so just consistently, this guy has sized up from a small little 4-inch pot to this bigger pot and to the bigger leaves. And so I'm just really pleased with it. It's a very beautiful plant. I bought it because I really wanted a Philodendron gloriosum. I got that this year too. So I technically marked that one off of my list of plants that I would like to own. And I couldn't find it. Like, it was just a very difficult, hard to come by plant. And so this one came up at the, at the Tipsy Gardener. Let me just move it out of the way or just hold it here. So this one came up at the Tipsy Gardener. She had them available. And so I decided, I don't think I'm going to find a gloriosum, one that's within a reasonable cost and size. And so I just decided to get this because I want to say it was like 25 bucks maybe or something. It wasn't very expensive at all. Honestly, no, it was probably $25 because there was another plant that I purchased at the same time and it was 15 and I just couldn't believe it. Anyways, but oh yeah, my Plowmani, my Philodendron Plowmani, which I do love that plant as well. But anyways, I bought it because I'm like, well, I'm never going to get the gloriosum. And so I'm just going to buy this guy because it's the same. It's a cross, by the way. And so it's crossed with the gloriosum. That's why it has this big, nice, velvety, pillowy leaves, not quite as velvety as the Philodendron gloriosum. But I picked it up and thought, like, let's just try this one. And it surprised me. It's done really well. Again, I don't really think about it. I just set it in a corner, and it's done wonderfully. It started out under my Barina grow light, and then I moved it once it started to grow out of that space because it grew very quickly. And then I put it on the side of my TV. And so I feel like I've shared this one a lot on my Instagram because it does have such beautiful velvety leaves, but I don't really share about it much here. Yeah, again, I don't know why. It's just kind of like out of sight a little bit. And so I don't really think about it. But as I was thinking, I was like, no, you know what? That one is the best grower. It's easy care. Again, doesn't mind being neglected. And it just continuously grows very well without having any leaf unfurling issues or any humidity issues, no browning tips. The only thing I will say on this, and it's with all of my philodendron, is they do have a lot of extra floral nectaries they push out kind of consistently. So if you are noticing the back of your leaves having these like sticky sap bubbles, that's extra floral nectaries. It's not a bad thing. It's fine, but that's about it. Otherwise, it truly is a very easy to care for, uncommon plant. So I really enjoy watching it grow. And I do need to plant it in something that it can actually crawl in, because just like a gloriosum, it took on the crawling. And so you can tell it's definitely coming out of the pot. It's not growing straight up. It's laying down and out. So that will be a problem for 2024. I would say my overall favorite, and if you are new here, then you won't have heard this a million times. But if you aren't new here, you will have heard this 5 million times, and you will probably know, or maybe you won't. But my overall best and favorite is my Philodendron Burley Marks variegated. I did get this, I had to write it down, I got this in 2023, February of 2023. Sorry, with my Syngonium albo. So I did get those two plants. And so this one, it was a surprise. I actually went to a pop-up specifically to get the Syngonium albo, but they were selling a lot of other rare and uncommon plants. Some of them that I'd heard of, like they had Jose Bonas, they had Paraiso Verdes, they had Strawberry Shakes, Pink Princess, plants like that. But wasn't interested in any of those. I did, however, see this little guy, and it was a small little guy, and I'll put a video of it up because it was just in a like starter grower pod in sphagnum moss. and it's now grown into this 6-inch pot, and it's beautiful. I've actually chopped it back. So I did have one available for purchase. Nobody bought it. I was really bummed about it, and it was a really good price, but I don't think that there were probably collectors at this thing, the show that I was at. But I really enjoy this plant. Like, it has, I feel bad saying this, surpassed my liking of the Syngonium albo, the plant that I went for. That was also on my list of plants that I would love to own. But this guy is so fun, it's so bubbly, and the variegation on it is so beautiful. Now, I will tell you, a lot of people comment when I share this and say that they have had these or they have them and they have never seen one with this type of variegation. I have seen these in person and in store, and I have seen them in pots that are like 6-inch pots sell for $200. There's no way I would pay $200 for this because it is an unstable variegation. And so the most complaints that I have seen with people who own these is that theirs have reverted back. So I will say that if you do like this plant, they are extremely expensive. I would try to find someone who will send you a cutting for, a cost, or find Fitzgerald Tropics. They are a pop-up in Dallas at the North Haven Gardens, and see if they have them available, because they often do. But this one has got a really great variegation on it, and I only have one leaf that is all green, and it's right here. And it is coming out from, I'm trying to figure out where it's coming from, because it is a newer growth. So I will be curious to see if it like continues being all green like that, or if it will go back, because it came off of this one right here. So this little guy, which is a half moon and is a beautiful variegation, but you can see it has a majority of, green versus the variegation. But otherwise, and that is a different plant. So there are several cuttings in this one pot. And that the other thing about this plant is I've seen this in often videos, like two people, I've seen this often in videos who talk about this, is these guys, the burly marks, or I don't know if it's the variegated form of it, push off growth points everywhere. So in a normal plant, you have one growth point per plant, basically. So most plants that you get have one plant in it, but that plant only has one stem, and it just goes up, and every new node comes out, after the newest leaf, and that's just how they grow. I don't know how to explain it other than that. This guy is growing everywhere. There are no rules to this, because he's growing. This is how he's growing, but he's got one growth point here, like that's coming out with this new leaf here. And he has another growth point over here, which I'm sure you cannot see. And so on top of the normal leaf, which is this one right here, where a new point will come out. And no, I did not chop these like back and then all of those new growth points form, because I actually chopped this plant way over here, and yeah, it's got 2 new growth points on it as well. And so it's just very fascinating to see how it does grow. It has growth points kind of like all around it, and so I think that that's what makes it like a fast grower and like more full. Again, it obviously has multiple plants in here, but it's just a super fun, bubbly, beautiful variegated plant that I really love. Now, I did have a watering issue. I will tell you, it grows so fast. And so I've repotted this 3 or 4 times. And when we left out of town for Thanksgiving, I forgot to water it. And so it does have one leaf yellowing here, and it has another one, here, that is yellowing as well. They're holding on, but they definitely, number one, it was root bound, and number two, the watering issue didn't help. And so I do just have to be on top of it and making sure that it's watered and that it isn't getting root bound, because it is kind of sensitive to that, I have found. So no roots coming out the bottom, but this guy is my overall favorite and best grower ever. I love this plant. If I could get rid of every other plant and just keep this one, I would, because I would be fine, because I really truly do love this plant. Now, my best comeback, the comeback kid of the year, it goes to my Monstera Thai constellation back here. So if you've been watching for a while, you will know that I've had a struggle with Monstera, and my Monstera constellation more specifically, and then another one we'll talk about later. But my Monstera constellation, it just kind of stopped growing. They are massive leaves, obviously. Like this one's not the biggest leaf. There's one below it that is even larger, and it's incredible. Like, I mean, that is stunning. But it gave me some major issues, obviously. Number one, it's a really large plant. Number two, it's a variegated plant. Number three, it's a monstera. I don't do great with monsteras. Variegated plants always take longer to grow and are harder to grow because of the variegation. And number three, it's massive. So that means that not only does it need like light, it needs a massive amount of light. And so I have always had it above this Santee 35-watt Bring and Grow light and in a southwest facing window, directly in the window. And so they've never quite been good enough. And so I decided to chop it back because one of the leaves got stuck earlier this year and it was rotting out on the inside and I could not get it out. And it was just one of those things where, am I going to chop it and just take it and see what happens? Or am I going to leave it and hope that the rotted leaf comes out eventually, or not? And so I decided to chop it all back, just give it a fresh start. And so I chopped it in 2 different places, I believe, propagated those. They propagated incredibly well. And so I had high hopes. So when they came time, I mean, I propagated them in a pitcher, like a water pitcher, and the roots completely outgrew it. Like, it was just a massive amount of roots. And so I was like, yes, it's time to pot back with the mother plant that I kept in the pot. And typically the mother plant, grows a new leaf fairly fast, at least from my other plants that I have chopped back like that. So I thought, like, in the time that it took to grow the new cuttings to grow roots, surely the mother plant will have pushed out a new leaf. Well, it never did. And so I potted them all back up, also wanting to look at the roots of the mother plant to see if a new growth point had formed. Nothing. And so I was like, okay, waited months, potted them back up together, moved them in here to this 35-watt Bring and Grow light, and just waited. And so I waited probably, I think, up until last month. And I honestly had given up on it. I was like, it is what it is. It's a massive plant anyways. It's fine. That's always how it's going to be. Great, whatever. Not really worried about it. And so I wasn't going to sell it, wasn't going to do anything with it. Just was going to sit here and be like a pretty corner plant. And so I think it was the last month, my husband found a new growth point coming out of the soil. And I was really excited about it. And I honestly figured that it was just going to come out as like a little baby leaf, and be nothing more than that. But it didn't. And I'll show a video of it. It came out of a perfect little variegated, fenestrations out the wazoo leaf. And so I was really excited about that. It has a lot of white variegation on it, which is a little nerve-wracking for me because the white variegation means that it's got, lack of chlorophyll, doesn't hold on to light, so it's going to take longer to grow. But all is well. I would say that that's a comeback. I'm really excited for it. So I hope that it continues to grow. I do have this in my soil mix and I do fertilize it. And so I'm hoping that those 2 things just consistently by springtime will get it moving and start growing, because technically there are 3 plants in there. And so all 3 of those should be pushing out new growth. But as I have heard and as I've experienced this last year, Thai constellations are just incredibly slow growers. They are not a Monstera deliciosa or even the albos, as I've heard. They are just a very, very slow variegated form of that. And so we will wait and we will see. But it made a comeback. I thought it was dead, but it's alive, it's growing, and it's good. It's holding on to all of its old leaves. So happy with that. Definitely made a comeback. The most surprising plant of my collection, I would say, is my Anthurium clarinevrum. I always say clarinevrum, but I think it's like clarinervrium. I think it's clarinevrium, or something along those lines. I also just call it Claire, so we're just going to go there. This is my Anthurium. I picked this up in November of 2022 from a plant store in Dallas, and it was my first Anthurium. And the only reason I picked it up is because it was cost effective and it was pretty small. And so because it was cost effective, I had no expectations for it and just kind of wanted to see how I did with Anthurium because I have never collected them. I liked them, and I had like a list of anthurium that were beautiful and would like to own. But this guy was kind of just one of those plants that I was like, we'll try it out. And it has surprised me. It's done extremely well. So when I brought it home, I actually set it underneath my Sansi 35-watt grow light in our living room. And it did really well, and it outgrew that spot. And so I potted it up to this, and I've stuck it in our bedroom. And this is where it surprises me, because before I did not give it any humidity. It was not next to a humidifier. It was just kind of alone by itself. And so I stuck it in my bedroom on my shelving unit with all of my other plants, probably 6 feet back from a southwest facing window. So did not have a grow light on it. And I was like, we'll see how it grows. Let's just see what it does. And it actually has grown a lot. So this is actually 3 plants in one pot. I actually took one of the plants out and propagated it. So I have it sitting under a Brina grow light in my bedroom. But this guy has grown a lot, actually. And so I need to water it. It's a little droopy right now. And it looks a little big for this pot, but when it had the 3rd plant in there, it wasn't. And so I'm just surprised at how well this has grown. The leaves have sized up a lot, like these little beautiful guys. And it's become one of my favorite plants. This is the newest leaf right here. And again, this sits 6 feet back from a southwest facing window. So it does not get the brightest of light, and it definitely doesn't have the humidity that, a lot of anthurium love. But it just continues to surprise me every time I look at it, how it has new growth coming out, like right here, all these little tiny leaves, and then how they just size up so nicely with all this beautiful veining. So I really love this plant. I would say it's an easy to care for anthurium if you're looking to start collecting them. Again, I let the soil dry all the way out, 6 feet back from a southwest facing window. It obviously loved its life under a Sandy grow light. And so if you do have grow lights, I would put it under there. But otherwise, it just keeps plugging along, and I really love it. It's a very fun, interesting foliage plant. And so I ended up picking out two more anthurium this year. One was a queen philodendron, a queen anthurium. And so I've shared about that here. And then the other one recently, well, in October, I picked it up, and it was an Anthurium forgetii. That one actually sits under a grow light, a little Sansi 5-watt grow light, nothing major, and about 10 feet back from a southwest facing window. So I'm just kind of testing Anthurium out to see what I can give it. But it doesn't seem to mind. The forgetii has a new leaf that's pushed out and does really well. I let it dry all the way out. So I am really surprised that I've done so well with them. And I just really love looking at them. I think it's a really fun, interesting plant. Now let's talk about the easiest plant that I have in my collection. The easiest plant of 2023 has to be my philodendron bilietiae. This philodendron is also incredibly interesting foliage. I picked this up, I think this year, honestly. I don't recall. It could have been last year by now, but who knows. I had seen this all around, and it was a very popular plant. So it leads me to believe it might have been last year, but I'll have to check on that. But I bought it as a 4-inch plant. This is an 8-inch pot, and it has just grown a ton from the small little plant that it was to this big guy, and it has a new leaf along the way. Now, I have set this everywhere in my house, and so that's what makes me say it's the easiest plant. So it is set in low light. It is set in a southwest facing window. It's set under a Purina grow light, and now it sits at the very top of the shelf under a Sansi 35-watt grow light. And so it's, with its size and how it's gotten larger and larger, it's kind of just made me move it around, because it does have this like really interesting pattern. See how it's like going out? They are climbers, so it will climb, and it has aerial roots that are way out. I mean, there's an aerial root that's coming out of the pot right here, if you can see that, and it has aerial roots on the inside. And so it's just a very interesting grower, but it has made me move it around several times to try to find a spot for it to fit. And it's managed to land here in the office under a 35-watt grow light. And so it's just done really well. I let the soil dry all the way out. It is in my chunky soil mix, because again, I've repotted this guy probably 3 times, and I've potted it twice up in my potting mix, my good soil. And it does not seem to mind at all. The pests on it haven't been an issue. I did have a thrips outbreak this year, And so that didn't really affect a lot of my plants, just my Monstera and a few other philodendron. But this guy seems pretty like pest resistant, I'm going to say. I don't know. No plant is officially pest resistant, but I just haven't noticed anything on this guy, and it's just been an incredibly easy grower, and very rewarding. And now I'm freaking out. Very rewarding because of the foliage. So they have these really long lanced leaves, with the one, what do they call that? Lobed. There we go. Lobed foliage. But it's just really beautiful. It's kind of got this like ribbed leaf edge. Wow. This video is going to be all about me not knowing how to talk. But it's just a very fascinating plant, very funky grower. I have seen these in large form, and they're kind of everywhere if you don't give them a pole to grow on, which I find fascinating and fun about them. And then they have these orange petioles. And so I love the new growth that it's the really orange petiole, and it does kind of fade out. And then they have the orange on the back, the veining on the back right there, and then the lime green center on the front. So it's just a very fun, beautiful plant, again, with unique foliage that I love to look at. The only thing I will say on this, again, as I stated on my McDowell, is the extra floral nectaries. So the extra floral nectaries on this guy is like heavily, it's a lot of extra floral nectaries constantly, but you can see it's like pretty much sap all here and all along this new growth. I mean, I can see it, you can't, but that's the only thing that's notable about this plant. Otherwise, incredibly easy to grow and just super funky. Now my hardest houseplant of 2023 to grow, and as I mentioned before, it's a Monstera, and it is actually what brought thrips into the house and spread to my philodendron melanochrysum, which that one was a high second. I was trying to figure out, is it going to be the melanochrysum or is it going to be this one? And that's my Monstera esqueleto, which actually, I guess you can't see it. It's right here. So yeah, I started this guy. I had it in maybe February of this year. Beautiful, full, lush pot. Bought it for $100. It just went south quickly. It had thrips on it. I don't know what to say. Like, it is what it is. I just didn't catch it, and it tore that plant up. And so I unfortunately had to chop basically all of it back to 2 leaves and then just wait. And so it finally started growing. But here's the other thing, is it pushes out runners like crazy. So it wants to climb, and it likes water, it likes high light, and I just didn't give it that because, again, the thrips issue forced me to kind of isolate it because I was having such a hard time with them. And so I kind of just neglected it, left it alone, and unfortunately it just now is this 2-leafed. Oh no, he's got 3 leaves. Wow, it's just a bad 3rd leaf. So you can see it's just like depressing. But I chopped it all back and let it regrow, started regrowing, only grew runners. The runners were really long, I will tell you that. So I chopped them all up and I started propagating them, and they all came out. I'm sure I lost a few, but I did actually a Monstera esqueleto review, and maybe I'll link that video here or in my description below. But I did give like a care overview of it because I kind of figured it out now. It likes highlight. I moved it over here just recently to the Sandy 35 watt. And it just is going to sit next to its sister here, who also is a problem. But I do get a little nervous because when I have gotten pests in the past on a specific plant, 99% of the time that plant is going to have a recurring pest issue. So my philodendron collie, my philodendron melanochrysum was an issue this year because as soon as this got thrips, it got thrips, spider mites, and I could not keep them off of it. So I chopped that all the way back, and I've propagated it. Actually, these 2 pots right here that are hanging right here are philodendron melanochrysum. Loved it. Was on a plant like wish list that I could have, and eventually got it. And then it just had pest issues, and now it's off because I don't want it anymore. But yeah, this guy is the same way. So I'm a little nervous that it's going to end up with thrips again and be too close to my other plants. So I've kind of just continued to neglect it and keep it alone and isolated. in fear of that, but I again had just chopped it back, so it grew two new leaves. However, then it just started pushing out runners again, and so I chopped it all the way back, and as recently, and just restarted it. So the two leaves that I have chopped off, I propagated them. They're doing really well in my greenhouse. I actually have I had two available smaller little node cuttings that I had taken and grown from just a wet stick propagation. And then I have several others that are also growing. And so I am just sitting it here, but it's been my hardest plant to grow of 2023 and my worst plant. So yeah, it looks pretty sad and decrepit. Probably would never purchase one again, just being honest. Which brings me to my least favorite plant. You would think it would be that one, but it's not. It's my philodendron melanochryzum. So I guess I can get one out. I'm trying to think of when I got this, and I think it was 2023. I don't remember. But I actually drove all the way to Fort Worth for this because it was a plant that, was very uncommon, very high cost. And I found it for a low cost in Fort Worth at a shop. It was $30. So I thought that's worth driving an hour for. And I did it. And then I realized this wasn't worth an hour drive because it got spider mites, it got thrips, and it's just continuously to get them. Like it just continuously gets them. And it's just awful. And I've never had a plant like that. And so I've kept this isolated. I actually had it just in a plastic baggie a couple months ago. Like I just keep it really isolated. The other half of it is, and now I'm panicking because it's just like, watch it have something on it again. The other thing about it is the growth. It needs high humidity. Like there is no getting around it. Needs high humidity. Doesn't do well without it. Otherwise, you're just going to get these little tiny leaves. Now this is probably completely new growth off of one of these leaves. These are all three a plant, like cuttings, and only one of them is growing. But in general, you're going to get these small leaves or you're going to get no leaves because they're going to get stuck unfurling. And it's just going to be an issue and you're going to have to chop it off and start over again. That's my experience with it. I know Sydney Plant Guy has one and it's beautiful. He has high humidity and he keeps it well watered and it grows on a moss pole and like all of the things. But for this plant with the pests and all of that, I just haven't wanted to give it that same because I am fearful that it's just going to continue to get the pests and going to be a problem. So I thought maybe it was just that one plant because sometimes you get a plant and you can get another one and it's completely different growth pattern and how it acts. So I did purchase another one, again, very low cost. And so I thought, let's just try it out. And I did, and it did the same thing. So I think it's just this plant. Beautiful velvet leaves. They get massive, but not worth the hype or the care that it takes. So I've found that people talk, if they want like a velvet leaf that's similar to this, they either get a splendid, maybe it's just a splendid, which is a cross, I think, between a melanochrysum and something else. I can't remember. But they get a splendid. So maybe try that out before you try this because this is a really hard plant to care for. And as much as I love the velvet leaves and how large they get, it's just not worth it for me. And so will not be on my list in 2024. It's just my least favorite. And I think why it's my least favorite and not the Esqueleto is because I was so excited to get this plant. I thought that it was so beautiful. And again, it was one of those rare plants that you just didn't see. And so, yeah, this one, it's a dud. Now, what's absolutely not coming with me to 2024? Well, it's all those houseplants that I purged, but specifically, it's my Ficus burgundy that I left outside because it got spider mites off of this guy. And it was so beautiful and it was a great little tree. But I chopped it all back. I just had issues again getting the spider mites off. Spider mites, didn't have to deal with those any other year besides this year, and only on those two plants, thankfully. But they are really hard to get rid of. I mean, they just keep coming back for more, and there is no more that they can take. But they took my burgundy, and I just chopped it all the way back. It did start to grow because I did that in the summertime, and I left it outside. did start to grow. Dog ate it. I left it out there, just didn't care. It frosted over. Husband told me to bring it in. I said, I'm over it. It is what it is. So now it's just a stick that I need to go throw away. But that one is definitely not coming with me. It's sat in my southwest facing window in my living room. And again, it was really pretty. It grew really well and really easily. I think that rubber trees tend to grow a lot easier than ficus, like not elastica, because that's what it is. It's a ficus elastica. It's a rubber tree. But my lyrata down here, I have a lyrata, and it's actually doing really well. But yeah, that one will not be coming with me this year. Now in 2024, I tried some new things too, I would say, with my plant collection. Number one, I added the Sansi grow lights, and that made a huge difference. I added, what did I add? Oh, Foliage Pro. Foliage Pro Dynagrow. There you go. I think it's called Dynagrow Foliage Pro as my fertilizer. So previous years, I did very natural fish emulsion, worm castings, but I decided to try this because it smelled less. And so started using that at probably the middle of the year in the summertime, maybe in the springtime, actually. I think in the springtime, because I wanted to see how it did well, like during the growing season. And I would say I really enjoyed it. So it is a lot pricier, I will say, than the fish emulsion and worm castings. However, it goes a long way. So one little bottle, I think, is like $25. However, I still have that one bottle from this early spring. And typically I do like to water or fertilize with every watering, or try. And so I will say that that made a huge difference, I think, just in how I take care of my plants, the ease of it. I actually wanted to use it. Yes, it's a chemical product, so I was trying to stick away from that so much and go more natural, but I've really enjoyed using it. And then two, my soil mix. So I came up with my own soil mix, the Good Soil, and I sell that on my Etsy shop. And so I have slowly moved all of my plants into that. And it's been really good for my plants. It's been really good for me because the pest issue is down. I just feel also better about what's in it, I guess. I feel less gross about having stagnant soil, and it's like sometimes smells, which is really weird, and just purchasing it. So I done that for my plants. That was new. And then the third new, I guess these are like best products, maybe you could say, is my pump sprayer. My pump sprayer has been a huge help in taking care of all the plants in the greenhouse and then fertilizing. So I just mix my fertilizer directly into that and then pump it, and it mixes it up. And then I just use that to water all of my plants, and it's been really helpful. It's been easy to water in place. And so those are three things that I did differently this year with my plants that I have not done in the past. And so it's really helped out, and it's worked out well, and I will be taking those with me into 2024. Last one, and I didn't bring this one in here with me because it's a larger plant, but the plant I'm most looking forward to growing in 2024 is my Queen Anthurium. So I got this in the summer. I purchased it from a Florida shop. It's called Native Plant Shop, and it's done really well, I would say. It does have yellowing on it, which I know is a common problem for the Queen Anthurium, so I wasn't expecting like it to be perfect, but it's done really well. It's pushed out a new leaf in my care, and I've repotted it probably 2 or 3 times now. So it sits in a massive pot that's like deep, because their root system, I feel like, is deeper than it is like wider. They also climb, and so I've put it on a moss pole, and I'm really excited to see it grow because the aerial roots are growing and they're getting to a point where they can start attaching. So I'm really excited to see that guy grow more, and hopefully just keep consistent growth, because it does make me nervous. That plant is very rare, and so it's probably the second rarest plant that I own, and I don't want to kill it because it's just, a plant that I probably won't ever find again or own again. But it's been growing really well. Yes, again, it has yellowing leaves, so it does need highlight, it does need humidity, and it does need to be watered consistently, is what I found. Does it need humidity? Probably not if you water it correctly. I tend to forget and treat it like the rest of my plants and let it dry all the way out, and it doesn't like that. It likes to be well watered. And so I have put it in my good soil because they are temperamental and they do need a specific soil. Again, from all of the information I pulled on the internet, that was the major consistent comment was soil. and then watering. And so don't let it dry all the way out. And I have tried not to, but it has happened. And then give it a moss pole to climb on. And so I've done that. And it's just been doing really well. So I really love that plant. It's very beautiful, long leaves, very unique. And so I hope that it grows more and better in 2024. And that was pretty much it. That was my overall review of 2023. Going into 2024, again, I don't have wish lists, again, because I feel like sometimes you get so siloed in, like it takes the fun out of owning plants and having them. If you get so stuck on trying to find that plant and like having to own that plant, like that's not what it's about. And so, but I do have a list of plants that would be fun to own. And so those ones on this list are my philodendron variegated heart, which I've had this on my list for quite a while, and I've had several opportunities to purchase it. And I mean several times I've had it in my cart, but it just hasn't felt like good, I guess. I'm just like, I don't need that. Like, it still costs a lot in shipping, or it costs a lot in store. And so like, it's just one of those plants that's like, I'm happy to see it and at least I get to pick it up and look at it. But I think it would be fun to own that plant. And another one is just an unvariegated burley marks. I had the chance to buy this one as well. It's a little bit more uncommon one to find, just the unvariegated version. I'm not really sure why. But I did have the chance to buy a gallon pot of it for 20 bucks, and I didn't because it was in Florida, and then I would have just had to take it all off, like all the soil out, and package it up, and it would just been a pain because it was in a 1 gallon pot. I mean, this thing was massive, and it was so bubbly and really fun and cute. But I think that one would be really fun to own because the other one's really fun to own. And then the last one is a philodendron patriciae, I believe is how you say it. But it's kind of like a queen anthurium with just its really elongated leaves. And so I just find it fascinating. There is an anthurium that is like it, and I can't remember that name. But it honestly kind of looks like a philodendron. It's like a really like high end, not high end. It's really sought after philodendron that just came out on the market. I can't even think about it. Well, not that it came out on the market. It's been out on the market, but it officially like hit market and you can buy it more readily now. It looks like that one, and I can't think of what it's called. It starts with an S. But anyways, it looks like that, but just a different version. It's just a very fascinating, like kind of cascading, just really long lobed plant. And I've always found it interesting. And so I think that would be really cool. I have no idea where they're sold or like where to find one at, but it's just a plant that I've enjoyed looking at online, and have seen people own. And so I think it would be fun to have it. So maybe 2024 I'll find one, but I highly doubt it. But yeah, those are 3 plants that those are my 2024 plants that are on my like, I think they're cool list, and maybe I could find them somewhere. That was it. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments what your favorite plants were of 2023, or what your least favorite plants were of 2023. And make sure to subscribe, and we'll see you in the new year.